Welcome, welcome, welcome to I Change the Narrative, a podcast for and about Black men inspiring, supporting, and empowering other Black men and Black boys. I want to do something a little different. Instead of reading your bios, I would like for you all to provide a bit of background on yourselves and speak to the work that you do so that our listeners know that you are actually doing the work, actively practicing what you live, and so that it helps to support our conversation. So please feel free to, one of you, take it away.
Okay, I guess I'll start. My name is DeMarcus McMillan. I'm originally from Mobile, Alabama, and I currently live in Washington, D.C., where I am an assistant principal in the District of Columbia Public Schools. I have done a ton of research on being a Black man. From an academic standpoint, but of course I have a lived experience as well. So I bring all of that to the table. So I've been in education for the past 9 years, and I've always wanted to be an educator. I grew up in a single parent home where I didn't have my father there. So I have some issues with abandonment, and I wanted to turn my life into one of those stories to where it's able to show other Black boys who are growing up without their fathers that they can still make it as well. So after I graduated from high school, I went on to Tuskegee University and studied English. And then from there, I went on to Alabama State University, where I got my master's in education with an emphasis in curriculum and instruction. And then I went on from there to Howard University, where I received my doctorate in educational leadership. And so my goal, my whole life mission, is to help other young boys know that they're able to defy those negative stereotypes, no matter what their situation or story is.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. McMillan, for coming on to the show. Chazz.
Sure. So my name is Chazz Scott. So I grew up actually outside of Baltimore in a town called Ellicott City, Columbia area. Spent most of my life there with my mother. So I went to school down at Hampton University, the real HU. I know a lot of people have a lot to say about that. It is the real HU. So I went down there and I studied computer science undergrad, and then I went ahead and did my master's in information assurance, cybersecurity. So full-time, I'm a cyber defense engineer. When I was going through my undergraduate and graduate programs, I read a book called Power of Positive Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, and it totally changed my perception and awareness on how to live kind of my life. And one of the things I started to realize is how that had an effect on me, but how that could also have an effect on children and youth, especially in underserved communities. So from that, I actually started a nonprofit called Positively Caviar, which I'm the executive director, chief creative optimist of. And what we really do is focus on mental wellness workshops in the Baltimore and DC communities, where we pull kids into a space that gives them not only understand how their mind and body works, but we put them into a space that allows them to talk about mental health and give them tools and strategies to overcome negative self-talk, understand the difference between a growth mindset and fixed mindset. So we complement many of the formal sort of mental health programs that are out there. And, if you take a look at the studies, 63% of African Americans believe that mental wellness or mental health is actually a sign of weakness. We're trying to transform that stereotype, and it all comes down to being okay to have those conversations. It's okay to have negative thoughts, but how can you position yourself to put you in a better position to overcome them? And we give kids the tools and strategies to have the ability to overcome adversity before adversity hits. So we've been doing that for about 3 or 4 years now, 5 years now, and it's been amazing. So that's what I do.
Awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Chazz. And Akeem, how are you, sir?
Can y'all hear me clearly? Peace.
Yes,
Everybody. Can y'all hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome.
Yes.
I apologize. There's just a little lag from my phone.
Yeah, we hear some feedback.
Uh,
So we do hear
I'm
some
doing
feedback.
well. Thank you for having me. Oh, you hear some feedback.
It looks like you're logged in on two
Yeah.
different machines.
I think one of them has to be
Yeah.
away. Yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna just get started and wait for Akeem to join us. Wait a minute. Wait for him to join us. Is that okay? We can get started. Here he is. We're all good?
Okay, let's try this. I just left the platform from my laptop.
Okay.
And I'm just going to use my phone.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for creating this platform. It is an honor and a privilege I do not take lightly. And I'm grateful to be able to share this space with other brothers, other Black men who are doing the work, and just grateful overall. So I appreciate you for having me and for having us.
No problem. Can you give a little bit of background about what the work that you do, please?
Yes. I'll try to do that as briefly as possible. So a little bit about me. I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I was raised by my grandparents, and may they both rest in power. Throughout growing up, very similar to a lot of Black boys, I found myself at a crossroad and was trying to figure out, which decision to make, and, and not because I was involved in a whole lot of negative actions, but when you grow up without the kind of social and emotional support that we are now offering through my organization, there's a conscious effort whether or not you should exist, and I was at a point in my life where I was asking myself that question, and found there was a time in my life where I was able to find who I was, and that really propelled me into who I was becoming and who I am today. And so I'm sure I'll be able to talk more about that throughout the rest of the broadcast. But since finding that out, I then began to think about how experiences that I've experienced are also being experienced by other youth, especially young Black boys. And if that is the case, how can I make it my social responsibility to play a role in supporting these young men and supporting young people, BIPOC youth, ages 13 to 18, and decided to create an organization called the Leadership Journey that focuses on leadership and travel, cultural, educational experiences. Throughout the year, we are engaging young people in educational advocacy development, where they are going through conversations led by themselves around injustices across the spectrum, and how it's important for them to be a part of the social change and all of the social movements, and throughout that journey that they're experiencing as advocates and leaders, we're also propelling them through a health and wellness curriculum, where we're making sure that they are prioritizing their mental and emotional wellness. And as that's happening, we are also raising money to take them out of the country and or to other states where we are able to do cultural exchanges. And so we've taken 15 young people to South Africa for 2 years in a row, and we did Kenya last year. COVID has stopped us from going to Ghana, but fingers crossed. Thank you.
I'm sorry. So glad to have you all here. Today's topic is Black men building resilience among Black boys. First, I want to read a couple of ideas to you all that I've been seeing on Twitter about Black boys. And I want you to give your input. So we have to start with observation, with assessing Black boys. What are we currently looking at in our boys? And when I asked this question, the Black men that gave me, this is what some of the Black men, how they responded. It seems that they don't make them like they used to. They are no longer built to last. They give in easily, give up too fast, and at the first knockout, they cower down. What are your thoughts about the currency of these Black boys? Anyone can take it.
Okay, I'll start first. I'll start first with my thoughts on what you said. I just want to repeat them so I make sure I'm clear. They don't make them like they used to. They're not meant to last. And at the first knockout, we're basically giving up. That's simply not true. It's just not true. I think if we do a couple of things to defy stereotypes and to directly speak to that. Now, whether we want to believe that the Willie Lynch letter is real or Willie Lynch is a real person, one of the things that we have to understand is that the conversation we have about what was written in that letter is real. And one of the premises that speaks to that letter is put the old against the young and have the older people always downing the younger people instead of having the older people or the wiser people or the more seasoned people reaching back to help our young children. And I think there is a disconnect there. Instead of saying, I don't know why they're sagging their pants, I don't know why they're doing this, go back and teach them, help them, pray for them, support them. And then maybe we will be reach that expectation, I guess, of what we are supposed to be. They're not meant to last. I'm writing a book right now. I forgot to mention that in my bio. I'm writing a book called The Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness of Black Men in America. And the research, and I did my dissertation on that when I was at Howard too. And what I found is that each area and each facet of American life, there's always something that's not affirming for Black men. Whether it's an education, that's my arena, it's almost like, and Jakufu said this, that it's almost like the public education system is trying to commit genocide against Black men or Black boys. There are some areas that are not affirming for Black boys. We need to start affirming our Black boys in every area. And we are almost disenfranchised in every area, whether we look at public education, public health, housing, opportunities with jobs and things like that. We have to start putting things in place to help support our Black men. That's why my hat go off to like LeBron James and people like that who are creating spaces in schools. And of course, my brothers that are on this call who are doing that type of work. And then the first knockout. Research actually says that there is a strand of resiliency in all Black men. And Dr. Bush from, I can't remember which university, some university in California, he did a study on the resiliency of Black boys. And what he found is that there is a continuity and a continuation of resiliency from the days of that we were in Africa to where we are now. And so we have to be resilient. We're still here. We're still fighting. We still have a purpose. But I think in so many different spaces in our lives that we don't get affirmed, and we need to be affirmed.
I agree.
So I think DeMarcus, you hit it right on the money, man. The first thing I have to say is, I mean, we Black men are some of the most resilient people here. I think one of the things that people tend to forget is, how we got here and how we're still here today. We have to put that in context. We're still here. We were shipped here. We see news and media that perpetuates a stereotype that does not support us, that actually feeds our subconscious mind, to make us feel like, well, who are we, right? All of us have that conversation in the back of our head. It's like, the world is telling me I'm this, but I know I'm not that. Like it happens to all of us. And it's, in our nonprofit and our workshops, we focus on resilience, and cognitive science has proven that optimism and positive thinking actually has an effect on the neurological structure of your brain and actually instills mental resilience over time. We're not saying, overcoming your difficulties we're not saying you won't have difficulties. What we are saying is, when you have resilience in a mind that is equipped and being able to position yourself to adapt over time, it'll become a lot easier. So Black men, Black boys are super strong. But one of the things I think DeMarcus kind of touched on, which was really, really important, is people like us and people that are older. They've been through some of those same experiences. We have to lead them. We have to guide them. We've been through those experiences before. You better take them by the hand and guide them, because that, again, this is the essence of the Black family and the Black man. We have to continue to guide the next generation. And if you don't do that, and if you look down upon them and you make judgment calls, those it's so funny, because those same people that make those judgment calls, they're people you may have been in that same position. They were making the same judgment calls about you. So it's necessary, absolutely necessary. It's your personal responsibility to go back into those communities and educate those minds and pull them out of that consciousness, because it is very, very important that you give Black men positive image self-psychology. That's one of the things that we lack within the Black community. And that's one of the things that we focus on at Positively Caviar.
Wow. Akeem, you have any thoughts on that?
Man, both powerful messages. Both powerful shared from these brothers, which I totally agree. There isn't a bone in my body that will try to debate that. Dr. Naeem Akbar says, "Know thyself."
Mm-hmm.
And I start with that because based off the answers that you shared, right, it makes me think of how important it is when we are referring to young Black boys, how important it is for them to understand the texture, right, the texture and the makeup of their bloodline, right. It is within them already. It is within them already that they are resilient. It is within them already that they embody grit, right? A lot of conversations about whether or not our kids, our babies, right, have grit and they want to create lessons for this. No, our boys they already embody this. This is inside them already, right? The fact that they wake up and have to find themselves going to school in situations that are not comfortable, in situations that are not safe, right? That's them all already, right? And some in a subconscious way saying, "I'm not giving up." Every day that they wake up and proceed to go throughout the experiences that they are living in is their conscious decision to say that they are not giving up. And so to say that they are giving in, to say that they are giving up too fast is something that I cannot agree with, because we know that resiliency, right? And this is what brother Scott started to talk about. But I would like to expand on that. Is this is not something that we have to debate when we talk about young Black boys, right? It is something that we can help bring out of them, help them to acknowledge that they have this already. I think about the historical context as an educator myself in studying African American studies. I think about the historical context and how Black men, the image of Black men, the psychological of Black men was always meant to be broken. It was always meant to be broken down. And so anybody who has ever come across a young Black boy who they believe is displaying the information that you shared with us is not acknowledging that they have come across a young Black boy who has been broken psychologically, emotionally, right? And it's not that they aren't built to last. It's not that they aren't built like they're used to. It's what everything Brother DeMarcus mentioned earlier around having, it's a cycle, right? If you've run into a young Black boy who are displaying emotions and what you shared, you have just ran into a young Black boy who has been impacted by the cycle of being beaten, broken down mentally and emotionally by everything externally that's playing a factor in how that young Black boy sees himself and how that young Black boy interacts with the world. And so it is our position, it is our social responsibility to make sure that when we interact with young Black boys who have started to already believe in these stereotypes and these labels, it is our responsibility to make sure that we are reminding them who they are.
Absolutely. Can I add to that real quick? That was very powerful. That was so powerful. I want to say that there is no coincidence to the results that we see. There is no coincidence to the results that we see, that the system and structures that are in place right now lead us to the results that we see today. And I like how you started it with know thyself. It's because the system and structures that are in place are meant to break us down. It's intentional. It is intentional, right? And I know we talk a lot about the mental health, and that's very, very important, very, very important. But I also like to talk about the spiritual health too of our Black boys, because at the end of the day, we are spirits living inside of a body. Right? If we realize who we are, if we realize, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but I love reading the passage in the Bible where the king, this is a king who decided that, hey, we're going to kill off all the male children in this land. Whether we believe Moses was a Black man or not, I'm not here to debate that piece, but let's just take this idea for an example. The government, the system, the powers that be realize the strength and the tenacity and the leadership and the kingship of men, whether they were whatever their race is. Same system is going on here. He ordered that all of the male children be killed off. It was Moses' mother who decided that I'm going to put you in this basket and I'm going to put you up the Nile River to save your life. And look what happened. It was Moses who led his people out of slavery, right? It was Moses who did that. Now, whether he was a Black man or not, whether Jesus was Black, I'm not here to debate any of that. But people feel our anointing. People feel our power. And a lot of people are threatened by that. So they create system and structures in place to negate either the Messiah coming or a powerful man who is going to come through our bloodline from coming. And they create these systems, ghettoize us, put us in situations to where we're killing off each other. And it's not about, oh, they're just killing each other, Black on Black crime. We got to talk about mental health. We got to talk about poverty. We got to talk about keeping people in such a deplorable state to where they are in straight survival mode. Right. And they're putting us in these situations. But this is what I want to say, and I don't want to get too spiritual. Y'all, the Messiah is coming, whether it's coming through our bloodline or not. Jesus was born in a manger, right? So nothing that can happen to us is going to just deplore that truth from happening. But my point is, it is all intentional. This is not just, oh, this is a mistake. No, they came in and they studied us, right? They didn't just come in and just take us from our land and brought us over here. They studied us to see what made us strong, our families, our community, our education, our healthcare system like all of these things, right, that made us very strong. And they came in and studied to how can we break all of those systems down, kidnap them, not just their body, but their minds, and enslave them. And it goes back to exactly what Akeem said, that we've got so far away from I'm a king, I'm a leader, I'm knowledgeable, all of this type of stuff. And then we got so far away from knowing ourselves that we're willing to go to social media to find out who we're trying to be or who we want to be. So it's all intentional.
If I could add just to that, again, I don't want to get too spiritual too, but there's obviously a story that you guys are well aware of, Exodus 3:14, the burning bush, right? And obviously the bush is burnt, the burning, and God's talking to Moses, obviously. So here's the thing that I think is so important when we talk about knowing thyself. The interesting thing that happens in that story is, God says, I have to go. Moses is going to go rescue the Israelites, right? And God says, or Moses is like, who am I going to tell the Israelites that, to remove them from the psychological pressure and the slavery that they're in? And God says to Moses, I am sent you. I am. It's very, very important people understand the psychological and spiritual understandings of the importance of the words I am, because whatever you say in terms of I am and what you say afterwards is who you become. That's why affirmations are so important. That's why affirmations actually build new neurological pathways in your brain and actually over time actually influence the habits and the actions that you have over time. I am is one of the most profound 2 words that you could ever say as it relates to yourself, because whatever you say, I am, and what you say afterwards is who you become. And that's why affirmations are so, so important, because it's built into the consciousness and the minds of a human being. And people have to realize that. And that's one of the things that we have to instill within our community and Black men and Black and boys.
Wow. So I'm sorry. There's just so much that you guys said, and it's just so powerful. So these affirmations, how do you deal with boys, Black boys, when their affirmations are negative, when their affirmations are self-inflicting, tearing them down? How do you all address that with these Black boys?
Go ahead.
Oh man, Scott, first, can I jump in first?
Sure.
Well, one thing that we do here at A Leadership Journey is we do self check-ins, and these self check-ins, right, allows for the young men to be able to tap into how are they feeling and how they felt over the last weeks, the last time we've seen them. And based on those self check-ins, when they report back, what we're listening for is how they address themselves, right? When they report back to us the second, we are listening to the language in which they go about sharing, right, how they describe themselves. And what we do is we have a bunch of self-affirmations that are listed throughout our space that reminds these young people, that reminds these young brothers, right, how we are encouraging ourselves to not only just talk about ourselves, but to also talk about other Black boys, right, and other BIPOC youth. And so when it comes to addressing them directly, what we have done is we have created a space, have no choice but to see what positive affirmations look like. They have no choice but to but to verbally regurgitate positive affirmations. And we also remind them that they are human. And because of that, right, they may find themselves in spaces and times where they want to, right, referring to themselves with a negative label or negative stereotype. So we remind them that they are human, but we continue to encourage them to have that positive self-growth mindset, and checking back in with those affirmations that we have bestowed upon them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm gonna add to what you just said too, Akeem, that we fight lies with truth. And with that, education becomes critical in how we debunk all of these negative stereotypes and myths. One of the things we just have to acknowledge is that education was never meant for Black people in this country from the very beginning. When this country was founded, education was withheld from certain groups of people, and we definitely were one of them. And so we cannot always confuse school with education, even today. Just because you see a school on a corner does not mean it's providing education. And this is what I mean by that. Education in and of itself is truth, right? The word education simply means to educe, which means that we are bringing forth gifts and talents that a person already possesses. And what education now looks like, it looks like testing. It looks like, well, now in COVID-19, it looks like, hey, I'm clocking in, clocking out on a computer, those type of things. We have to get back to the true essence and sense of education. The same education that helped to educe Dr. Martin Luther King, the same education that helped to educe Barack Obama. Right? These are people who have gifts and talents. You know how many Black boys have all these gifts and talents that they don't realize they have because they were not properly educated? And in an education system, we'll put a football in their hand and tell them to throw that. But this child or this king never realized that, oh, I could be a motivational speaker because those gifts wasn't necessarily matured and manifested and brought out by an educator, not just a teacher. Right? There's a difference. A teacher is a person who pours in. An educator is a person who pours out or pulls out. You see what I'm saying? And we have to know the difference between the two. So a teacher is going to give you knowledge. Then an educator is going to come in and show you what to do with that knowledge so that you can use your gifts and your talents to fulfill your purpose. Y'all can tell I'm a spiritual person. So there's a spiritual side to education as well. Right? If you study the life and the personage of Jesus, right, he was an educator and a teacher, right? So he gave them knowledge, but then he also was a preacher who was able, and an educator was able to show them, like Akeem was saying, and I'm gonna use your statement as my anchor, because he was teaching them, hey, this is what I have created you all to be. I haven't created, and that's why the affirmations and speaking truth over them is so helpful, and the education piece is so helpful too, because now as an educated Black man, when I see negative stereotypes, I can just quickly say that's not true. That's not who we are. I know that that's intentional. That's intentional to try to break me down. I know that I'm above and not beneath, that I'm a lender, not a borrower. Right. I know that things, I know I'm not just a conqueror, but I'm more than a conqueror. Like, I know those things about me because I know the truth. Right. And it's hard to deceive people who have the truth. So my push is that when we think about education and the education system, we've got to get back to what it really means to be educated and not just schooled. Because you have so many people who are schooled, who walk around with degrees and got all this stuff, but they are the people who are helping us to maintain the status quo. Kendi wrote a book, talked about how to be an anti-racist. And it helps us to uncover all these things that we subconsciously do. Like, for example, making fun of our Black kings' names. Even Black people have done that. Oh, little Tyrone, that's his name. Right? That is his name. My name is DeMarcus. I am Black. When you see my name come across a resume, you can tell I am Black. But we don't want to belittle our Black kings, but sometimes we do it to ourselves. So sometimes we have to unlearn some things so that we can learn the truth.
Unlearn. I love it. Unlearn. I'm sorry, Chazz. Go ahead.
No worries. Akeem and DeMarcus really hit it on both measures. DeMarcus said something that was super critical in terms of the educational system, in terms of allowing our next generation to be able to think for themselves and not just feed them information. We have to teach kids and youth the ability to not only just memorize information, but allow them to think for themselves. So I think that's extremely important through life progression. So, and then Akeem, you said something that was absolutely profound that I think is really, really important in terms of what you do with your program, is the self check-ins. A lot of us, I mean, in life, we don't even take the time to do self check-ins for ourselves. And self-awareness, understanding how you feel, is very, very important. It's like your emotional guiding system to figure out the emotions that you want to feel to influence you towards the life that you want to have. And National Science Foundation put out a study that said 60,000 thoughts is an average. In one day, you have 60,000 thoughts that a human has, and 86% of those thoughts are considered negative. Many of those thoughts are considered repetitive. And it's even worse for Black men when you got social media, you got the news, and you're subconsciously being influenced with these negative stereotypes. So one of the things that we do at Positively Caviar that I think is super important, and I do it all the time now, is meditation and mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And what we try to do is, number one, we already know cognitive science, neuroscience has already proven that meditation builds new neurological pathways to support your desired goal or your outcome. Now, what it also does is separate you from your positive thoughts and negative thoughts, to say, oh, that thought comes up, cool, I'm just going to sit here. Oh, that negative thought comes up, cool, I'm just going to sit there. So it detaches you from those thoughts. And what's really, really important is you gain self-awareness. You have the ability to influence who you are and who you want to become. You give yourself the ability to make a decision on who you want to become, because now you're more mindful. Now you're more careful. Now you have more self-awareness about the types of thoughts that are coming into your mind. And it's so critical because of social media. Oh my goodness. Everywhere you look, you see a fight, you see somebody getting shot, and it's so easy to be subconsciously influenced by these images and videos. And it can take a toll on our minds, whether we realize it or not, whether we see it either through social media or we see it right in front of our face. Neurologically, it still has an effect on the brain. So meditation, self-awareness, Akeem, the self-check-ins are super, super important. One of the last things that we do is, we discuss the importance of self-love. And in order for you to truly be a self-sufficient human being, to love another, a significant other, but also love your brothers and sisters and your family members, you have to know how to love yourself. And one of the things that we focus on at Positively Caviar is, we allow kids to stand up and we ask them, hey, what do you love about yourself? The problem is, the conversation is that we need to change in their minds. It would be very easy for them to say things that they didn't like about themselves, but it would be very hard for them to come up with things that they loved about themselves. That's what we have to tap. That's the conversation that needs to change. That's the conversation that we need to have. You are amazing. You are talented. You are smart. And that's one of the things I think is super, super critical and important. But not only that, last thing I have to say is, we're all the same. We all go through our ups and downs. We all have negative thoughts. We're all being subconsciously programmed. So it's important that you provide Black youth and Black men with the perspective of, I've been there before. And I know what it feels like. Because if you don't give the child opportunity to grow and to realize that there are people that look just like me that have been through it before, then it's almost like, I don't see anybody else out here doing it except the white man. And that's not the case. We've all been through it, and you need to have models and leaders to ensure that they're telling that story and telling that perspective, to give them the inspiration to let them know that they can do it too.
that self-love is so important in instilling in our Black boys. I think that it's important that they know, they self-identify why it is, what makes me so great. How do you tell the boys if they can't find what's so great about me? What do you say to that?
I guess I'll take it real quick. One of the things I've actually been incorporating into my life, and some of the things that I've been learning, is the importance of, there's like two different mindsets that you can live in your life. You can live a scarcity mindset, lack of belief, lack of self-esteem, or you can live a mindset of positive optimism, abundance. And it's really, really important that you understand which paradigm that you want to live in, but you also have the self-awareness to say, okay, this is how I feel, but this is where I want to go. So if that's the case, and you have those self-check-ins and you have that self-awareness, you say, these are the emotions that I need to have so I can support and get on a path of new awareness towards this new paradigm. And, a lot of people say, I have lack of self-belief, or I don't know who I am, or I have lack of money, right? If that is indeed true, and you believe that, there are qualities and things that you do have. Are you an individual that is funny? Are you an individual that has compassion? Are you an individual that who are you? What are some of the qualities that you do have? Because I guarantee you there are qualities that you have within yourself that other people wish they have. Mm-hmm. And if you start to give those qualities of what you have to others, you'll start to realize you do have a purpose. You start to believe in yourself, and you start to recognize that, oh my goodness, I am cool. I am amazing. I do have qualities that are really cool, and people recognize them. And not only that, you start to realize how your influence has an effect on others. And that is the most powerful currency that a human being can ever receive.
Yes.
And I can add to that. One of the things I did neglect to mention also too, prior to me becoming an assistant principal, of course I was a teacher, but I was also a dean of students. I have a fancy title now called Director of Climate and Culture. But back in the day, that was called the Dean of Students. And I love that role that I was in because I got a chance to really, really connect with students in terms of having those courageous conversations about purpose and destiny. And, the way that you're behaving right now is not who you are. And so we do have a lot of our Black boys, and just a lot of our children in general, who are going through identity crisis. And maybe I shouldn't frame it as a crisis, but I will say it could be a crisis for a lot of people, because a lot of the times people get stuck. We understand in human development, we're all becoming. We're becoming who we are. And sometimes, like Chazz was saying, or someone was saying about just the social media piece, well, if I don't know who I am, I'm going to start searching. I'm going to start Googling. I'm going to start looking at, and my father's not in the home. I may not be in a situation to where I have a positive role model, but I see Black men, and the Black men that I do see are maybe not the most positive role models. So then I start to emulate. What we have to understand about Black men, and just us as human beings as general, we were not meant to live alone. That we are social and biosocial beings. And so with that being said, that we are interconnected, and it is our responsibility to go back and to help our young Black boys, to help them realize who they are, to point them in the right direction. And sometimes the people who are pointing them in directions is not the right direction. Right. And we do have people who will take people a long way, but this is my belief. It's one thing to go a long way, but it's a different thing to go a long way in the wrong direction. Right. And so with that being said, how do we debunk those type of things in a situation to where we're teaching our young boys to be great, and they're saying, well, I don't see anything great about me, the first thing we got to fall back and we have to have conversations. It's a process. It is not going to happen in one conversation, two conversations. Sometimes I got to plant seeds. So when I'm in a situation to where I am talking to our young Black boys, I always refer to them as kings. Yeah. Young king, hey, if you're in the hallway, you just walking halls and not going to nobody class. They hear Dr. Mack's voice in the hallway. Hey, young king, I need to speak to you. Oh, here come Dr. Mack. We already know. Yes, I'm going to have a conversation with you now because you are great. Do you realize how great you are? Plant the seed. And let me say this. We cannot judge the day based on the plants that we see. We judge the day based on the seeds that we plant that day, knowing that the plant will eventually grow. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes I will plant the seed, Chazz will give it water, and it will be Akeem that will actually see the plant come into fruition. You see what I'm saying? And so he may be doing this in the day, but don't give up on those Black kings. Don't give up on them. It is a process. You have to understand it was a process for us to be where we are today, right? T.D. Jakes said one time, he was delivering a sermon, and he was very transparent. He said, I don't like African men. That's what he said. But it was a caveat to it. He went through the story. He was getting into a cab, and the cab driver was an African man. And they just had a courageous conversation because here's an African man and there's an African American. And they had a conversation. And he said, I always thought that African men were arrogant. And then the African cab driver said, he said, no, we're not arrogant or anything like that. We just realize who we are. The point that he was making was that we have gotten so far off from that greatness that we had, right? Look at Egyptian pyramids, right? We obviously knew about astrology, geometry, all of those things, chemistry. We all look at Rosetta Stone that was found in Africa. There are cures to diseases in all these different languages on these stones. So we obviously knew greatness. We knew all these things, but you have to educate and make sure that you understand that this is all a process to get us back to that place where we're supposed to be.
Wow. That's amazing. That what you just said was very powerful. Did anyone want to add to what Dr. DeMarcus just said?
I have nothing to add. He hit it right on the money. 100%.
Yeah, no, we're good to go. No competition, all love.
Well, gentlemen, this is our time. But before we go, can you please, each of you, tell our listeners how they can connect with you, how they can join with you on social media or any of that good stuff?
Okay, I'll go first. So my name on Facebook is DeMarcus McMillan, just like it's spelled in the video. And my Twitter, I can't remember my Twitter. You got to put it in. I have numbers at the end. I don't know why I have numbers. I'm not I'm on Twitter. You can connect with me on Twitter, but I forget my name. So I have to drop it in the chat or somebody can drop it in for me. And the best way to connect with me, though, is through Facebook.
Okay. Awesome.
And I'm on Twitter at Mr_Caviar. I'm on Instagram, Mr_Caviar. And then we also have a Instagram for Positively Caviar, where we post mental wellness tips and strategies, practical tips and strategies as well. You can also go to positivelycaviar.com, where we have a weekly newsletter that goes out that kind of gives people, weekly tips to help them get through the week, not only survive, but thrive. And then you can also visit our LinkedIn page as well, Positively Caviar.
Awesome.
So before I go ahead and share that, I want to apologize for the black screen, sis. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
But I will share on Facebook. It's Akeem Lloyd, as spelled below, AKEEM LLOYD. But I would actually, it would mean more if folks followed the young people and their journey, and you can follow them at A Leadership Journey on Instagram, A Leadership Journey, all one word. And on Facebook, it's A Leadership Journey. And so thank you.
No problem. Thank you all so much for contributing your thoughts and ideas and for doing your part in changing the narrative. If you've enjoyed the show, please let us know. We would love to shout you out and post your comments. If you or someone you know is changing the narrative, please contact us at iChangeTheNarrative@gmail.com. Meet us here next Saturday at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that commented, that is listening, that is supporting this podcast. And we just appreciate you so much, gentlemen. You are truly torch carriers. That's what God gave me this morning at 2:00 this morning. He said the men that are coming onto this show are torch carriers. So I just thank you. I would like to encourage you to keep it up. I will be following you all on social media. I will also reach out to you again, as I would love to have all of you back on the show. So thank you all so much. And I look forward to connecting with you soon.